Hello, and welcome to the Artificial Podcast, with your host Nick Myers.
Artificial
Intelligence.
voice recognition, machine learning,
Robotics.
actionable analytics.
It is Nick's goal to help everyone understand how AI and voice technology are reshaping our lives both personally and within organizations. Your glimpse into the growing world of AI and voice first starts now.
Nick Myers.
Nick Myers. Nick Myers.
Nick Myers.
Welcome to the Artificial Podcast. My name is Nick Myers, and I am here to help break down topics in emerging technology, artificial intelligence, and voice assistant tech to help everyone understand how these technologies are impacting our lives both personally and within our organizations. The Artificial Podcast is brought to you by Red Fox AI. Red Fox AI helps give brands a voice by leveraging the power of AI and voice assistant technologies like Alexa and Google Assistant. If you or your organization is interested in sponsoring an episode, please send an email to the Artificial Podcast at redfox-ai.com. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere that you stream podcast episodes. You can also follow the Artificial Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube by searching for the Artificial Podcast. Thank you for listening, and now on to this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Artificial Podcast for 2021. My name is Nick Myers and I am so happy to be back. And I am joined, of course, by my best friend, partner in crime, chief technology officer, an all-around decent, semi-decent human being, Mr. Brett Brooks.
You don't have to talk me up like that.
Oh, I thought I thought I'd just do my due diligence though and speak the truth.
Somewhat below average, decent human being.
Sure, especially after what happened today, which we won't get into. Let's just say we were actually supposed to be recording this over by Brett, but
the one thing I will share is I gave away my table and chairs at my place. And I'm like, Nick, why don't we have the podcast at my place? And we can, do it there. And I don't have to drive over to Sun Prairie this weekend. And then we get here and I forgot that I sold the table and chairs. There's no place for Nick to sit.
No. So it was really just a waste of time. But hey, at least it got me out of my place for a bit. For the record, Brett and I don't go anywhere. So when we say we get together, we can trust each other because literally we do not go anywhere and haven't.
It was a waste of time for you to come over here.
Right. And
to be honest.
And haven't since this pandemic started. So that's why we try to get together and record the podcast. So now we're doing it over Zoom. Great. But that's how we do most of our episodes. So anyhow, Brett, welcome to 2021. How does it feel?
The same.
Does it? Because
yeah, it feels the same.
To me, the past 3 weeks since the year began really feels like 3 years.
Oh, really?
Well,
so far 16 days in, it feels like it's been a week to me.
Let's take a quick stroll down memory lane.
What?
First and foremost, we started the year with the slow rollout of the coronavirus vaccine.
Uh-huh.
Not even just in the U.S. This is a global problem.
What do you mean like slow rollout? Like it's like a slug in this country, the vaccine.
Right. That's why
it's like
I said
a snail.
Okay. It is being distributed a bit quicker in other countries, so I'm trying to be general here for the nature of our audience.
Oh, I see. You're talking about the world right now.
Yes. So the slow rollout of the coronavirus vaccines, then the new coronavirus variant, which I'm sure has made headlines all around the world by now, and then the COVID-19 death toll surpassing 2 million people worldwide, and then the storming of the U.S. Capitol by entitled racist white people.
Yep.
And I'm open saying that on this show. I will say that because that's exactly what happened.
Well, yeah, you're just speaking facts, so.
But to all of you who are familiar with that meme about different things holding one another's beer, I'll definitely say I think 2020 2021 told 2020 to hold its beer.
I don't think 2021 is as bad as 2020 so far.
Okay, I'm trying to make a joke here. Live a little. God.
Okay.
Anyhow, I mean the year definitely is off to an interesting start. But I'll be honest, I'm really, really getting tired, Brett. And maybe someone who's listening right now may feel the same way. But I'm really, really tired of living through major historical events every other day. I'm sick of it. I'm really just kind of getting sick of it. I mean, let's take a look at the past 20 years. For context here, I know I have not lived long on this earth. I am 26. I own that and accept that. Brett is 28. He really hasn't spent a long time on this planet either. He owns and accepts that, right, Brett?
Yeah. Yep.
But if we just take a look back to the last 20 years through a majority of our young lives, let's see. Y2K back in 1999, which I was too young for, so I guess I really can't throw that into this mix.
The only thing I had was a little bug that if you slapped it, it exploded. It made a little explosion noise, and it was a little Y2K bug.
Oh.
That's the only thing my little 6-year-old brain knew about Y2K.
That's adorable.
Oh, isn't it? It's just so adorable.
So there was Y2K. And then to kick off the 2000s, of course, we had September 11th, 2001, which changed everything. After that, we had the Iraq War. I put war in air quotes. After that, we had the Great Recession and the financial crisis of 2008 that almost sent the world's economy into a death spiral. After that, we had the 2016 presidential election, and somebody was elected for the United States presidency that we never thought could be possible. And then we had the COVID-19 pandemic. Again, something a lot of people, myself included, never thought could be possible after the one we had back in... I keep forgetting. It's 1918, right? 1918.
And now this freaking storming of the Capitol.
Well, and I was going to cap it all off with conspiracy theory. We're living in conspiracy theory land, and the assault on democracy worldwide. All of this has happened within the span of 20 years.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I'm really getting tired of living through historical events. I'm a history buff. I love history, but I'm really getting sick of it. I'm going to be honest.
Dude,
However,
the public school tests in 50 years are going to be insane. We're going to get so many questions from our kids in the future. Grandpa, can you tell me about 2020?
And it's all going to be flashbacks. It's all going to be flashbacks.
Yeah.
Horrible, horrible PTSD-filled flashbacks. However, with all of this bad, I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy here. With all of this bad, a lot of great things have happened too. Our brains, unfortunately, are just hardwired to remember negative experiences over positive ones.
Which is sad.
Which is really sad. Just a defense mechanism. I agree it's sad, but we're hardwired to remember negative experiences for defense. Defense mechanism.
Evolution's sake, right? Because if we remember negative experiences, we'll be able to protect ourselves in the future from those negative experiences.
Right. That great old emotion fear that I often like to talk about. So, I didn't mean to... I don't even know how we got on this. I didn't necessarily mean to start the podcast this way, but
rolling.
I just want to put it into perspective for everybody that we're already a couple weeks in, and it's like, my gosh, can we just take a breath? Anyhow, we are in 2021, and I think that's positive all in itself. In terms of what's going on in my life, Brett, since we haven't done a podcast in a while, I mean, really nothing new.
There's nothing new.
Trying to kick the year off on a positive note and
continuing to work and code and make my mobile game that I'm building. And that's basically it.
We're all still in isolation, so yeah, nothing exciting.
Yeah,
but
basically it for me.
On a positive note, we do have some cool updates to share for the Artificial Podcast. Because we realized, of course, at the tail end of last year that we're getting to that point where we have enough listeners and we're talking to enough people that we really want to try and change some things up for the podcast in 2021. So a couple of things that you may start noticing and that we're going to start working on and implementing into the show include, first and foremost, we're going to try and theme it a bit more and have a bit more of a structured content focus for this year. And of course, we're always going to continue focusing on technology, specifically artificial intelligence, voice technology. And of course, last year we expanded our focus to blockchain, talking about 5G and Internet of Things. and really just technology in general, and I get, the riches are in the niches, but our whole goal with this has always been just to talk about a wide variety of things to educate people. But I think for this year, I'm going to really try and focus a lot of what we talk about on data privacy and security, and I'll explain a bit here why we are doing that, given the theme of today's episode. But last year I found a really deep interest in data privacy and security to become far more bullish on it for a variety of reasons. So you may notice that some of our episodes are tailored very much towards that this year. So if you are somebody listening who tends to work in this area or have experience in this area and need to get everything that you've worked on off your chest and into the airwaves, please reach out to us so we can get you on the show. That would be incredible. So we're really just going to try and weave data privacy and security into the fabric of really, as many episodes as we can. Of course, not every episode will just be focused on that, but that's going to be the underlying theme of this year. Mm-hmm. Second, we're going to really try and monetize our podcast. And this has been a long time coming. Brett and I put a lot of work into this each and every week. So we are putting together a sponsorship package. So if you are somebody interested in sponsoring, that came out wrong. I said that right. If you are somebody interested in sponsoring an episode because you feel the audience that we reach could also benefit your audience or your product, or wow, I'm butchering this. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
All right, we want to it's kind of like a Patreon kind of deal here. So we want to have people, if you want to advertise your products and stuff, we'll advertise them for you on our podcast through our audience. So
podcasts you hear, sponsorship, or we're coming up with a sponsorship package. Stay tuned for that. And we also begin a Patreon as well for some additional content to help support the work that we do, because we are actually, the third point, we're going to try and get more creative with our content. Definitely want to do more video and leverage our YouTube channel a bit more, because I love YouTube, I love video, and it's something we probably should have done from the start, along with some more interactive content to get you all engaged a bit more. We recently brought on a virtual assistant who is helping us with our digital marketing efforts, so she is giving us a ton of good ideas to consider as we think through the different directions we want to go with content and how we want to promote that on social media and engage you all. So be on the lookout for that. And then I know I mentioned a call for guests earlier, but if you would like to be a guest on the Artificial Podcast, again, if you work in any area of technology, I would love to hear from you and have a chat to see if you'd be a good fit for the show. Please feel free to reach out to us. You can send an email to the Artificial Podcast at redfox-ai.com. I really butchered that, Brett. I'm disappointed in myself. I guess a couple weeks off really messes with your brain.
I didn't even notice until you said you messed up.
Oh.
Should have just kept going and faked it.
Guess I'll just shut up.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Anyhow, I say let's get into the brass tacks of this week's episode. So, as I mentioned, a large focus of what we are going to be talking about this year will center around the theme of data privacy and security. And in fact, what we're going to be talking about this week will be revisiting data privacy and security specifically by talking about two recent events that I feel are very important to both data privacy and security. You may have heard about them, so apologies if I'm just reiterating something that you already know, but you may have not heard about these events, so I feel it is incredibly important to understand them in the scope of where we're heading when it comes to data privacy and security in 2021. This is going to be a pivotal year for data, folks, and there's a lot of factors at play. If you listen to one of our previous episodes where Robert Scoble came on and talked about what he thinks Apple is going to be releasing this year, that has a lot to do with it. People are becoming more and more cognizant of the amount of data that companies like Facebook and Google are collecting on us. And again, we don't entirely know where all of that data goes once it's collected, and the constant changing of terms of service and privacy policies to collect more data. So we're really, I think, getting to that point with the internet and with technology where the tome of silence that we've been in for 20, 30 plus years is finally starting to end. The public is finally starting to question a lot of this, and for good reason. And I think Brett can agree, when we both started working in technology, I really didn't care that much about data privacy and security. Of course, I knew it could be better, but I was of the mindset of a lot of people where, oh, well, the technology's already here and it already collects your data, and in order to make it better, it needs to be collected, so whatever. However,
Oh, I have a new opinion now.
right, I was going to say, however, 3 years into this now, I am the exact opposite. I am like, we need to do so much to actually start benefiting users and individual people from how their personal data is being collected and sold and misused.
Data is the new oil. Data is the modern oil of our generation, and they are getting this off of us for free.
Correct.
And that's how they make their millions, their billions.
Right. And again, I'm not saying that what the tech companies are doing is absolutely evil and terrible, because it isn't. In order to improve their products and services, yes, data needs to be collected, and I'm fine with that. All I want is more choice and more transparency, and we'll talk a bit about that here with these two different examples. So I say we start with the 2021 SolarWinds hack. So this is very, very recent.
I didn't hear about this.
How did you not hear about this?
No, maybe I did, but I've never heard the name SolarWinds.
Right, and most people probably have not. But you do remember a couple weeks ago when it was all over the news that a handful of federal agencies were compromised by Russian hackers. Do you recall this?
Yes, I know that. I didn't know it was called SolarWinds.
Yes, well, most people probably don't know that SolarWinds had anything to do with this, because you do remember a couple weeks ago, Brett, that the government came out and said a handful of our networks with different federal agencies were compromised due to a hack by the Russians.
Yes, I didn't know it was called SolarWinds. Is that a company?
Yes, I guess I'll get into it and explain here, and you can ask your lovely questions as you always do.
That's great.
So earlier this year, earlier being a couple weeks ago, which is just funny to me, earlier this year, U.S. intelligence agencies reported one of the largest and most sophisticated attacks against the United States. This made international news. I know this for a fact because I follow a lot of international news outlets like BBC and Al Jazeera, and they did report this. Now, in the wake of these attacks and the hacking that occurred, top U.S. intelligence officials attributed this really sophisticated malware campaign that was conducted to Russia, who reportedly was able to gain access to the networks of government agencies. And these government agencies include the FBI, the Department of Treasury, and the Department of Commerce. Yeah, not only that, but dozens of private sector giants like Cisco, Intel, Nvidia, Deloitte, and even Microsoft were compromised, with hackers even gaining access to Microsoft's source code and into the federal agency overseeing the U.S.'s nuclear stockpile.
Now, we always hear about when we get hacked, but like, how many times do we hack other countries, like our government?
That's a very good question. I do not have that info.
Do you think they do it on a daily, and then when it happens to us, that's when they like make it a big commotion?
Well, of course it's always going to be a big commotion when it happens to us, but we're the ones that actually started this. Cyber warfare didn't even really become a thing until 2010 with Stuxnet, which I don't want to dive down that rabbit hole. Go research that on your own time. But the U.S., as with most things, began what we're currently experiencing. But of course, we're never going to hear about when we hack other countries. We're only going to hear about when we get hacked.
Correct. So I don't care.
The fact that these hackers were able to get into all of these federal agencies and then dozens of these very large companies is terrifying. The fact they got into the federal agency overseeing our nuclear missiles is terrifying, because nobody actually knows what info they got or what they may have, what code they may have actually put into these networks.
And so, how come we don't, like, the American people doesn't really hear about this? Like, this is really important.
Exactly.
And they kind of keep it under the rug.
I'm not going to get conspiracy theory.
Oh.
However, it is super interesting that the same exact week that this came out, that siege on the U.S. Capitol building happened. I'm just saying.
I think that could be a coincidence.
I'm just saying. It very well could be. It probably is. I'm just saying, because this is bad. This is incredibly bad what happened. There is speculation that the hackers may have even inserted code into our electrical grid, or even acquired sensitive tax information, or even important technical and political secrets, according to the report I read. So this is very, very bad. Now, you may be much like me in the sense you're probably wondering to yourself, how the hell did they get in to these different federal agencies, networks, and these different enterprise networks, tech company networks that are supposed to be some of the most secure? You tell me how, Britt. Go ahead before I dive into it.
We got to get these damn boomers out of Congress.
Okay. Well, I'm going to actually go into the real story behind how this happened.
Story. Okay.
Are you done?
So I'm assuming.
Are you done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Are you done?
I'm trying to make the podcast more fun and entertaining here.
Well, shut up.
Okay. So I'm guessing SolarWinds?
Yes. How did you ever guess, Brett?
Oh, probably because the title of it's SolarWinds hack.
Smartass. Anyhow, how did this happen? So, as is the case with most serious hacks that attack substantial network infrastructure, and these were substantial network infrastructures, the hackers got in not by going through the affected agencies or companies themselves, but by using a third-party IT services provider that most people have probably never heard of. And the third-party IT provider in this instance is SolarWinds, and they are incredibly dominant in their niche. They serve 425 out of the Fortune 500 to monitor the activity on their computer networks. That's their main service line.
Why is it always the companies you never hear about that are the most powerful?
Exactly. Especially in technology and IT.
We hear about Walmart, we hear about Amazon, we hear about Microsoft, we hear about all these corporations and stuff. But the real true ones that you want to worry about are the ones you never even hear about.
Right. And that's what made this such a big deal, is because a majority of the Fortune 500 and our own government use SolarWinds' software to monitor the activity on their computer networks. So how did they actually get in? Well, hackers were able to gain access to the SolarWinds network and then inserted malicious code into their automatic updater of their software, which is known as Orion. So when that software update went out that had the malicious malware in it, more than 18,000 SolarWinds customers, including these government agencies and the companies I just mentioned, received this tainted update, granting the hackers access to these systems.
Wow.
That is mind-blowing. That is absolutely mind-blowing. So, because when you think of hacks like this, you think, well, what did Microsoft do to let this happen? Or what did the federal government do to let this happen? Well, it wasn't even their fault. It was the fault of the third-party IT services provider, that provider being SolarWinds. And again, not trying to point fingers specifically at SolarWinds here, but I'm sorry, hackers got into their system without them knowing and used their software updater system against them.
And when you think of a hacker, Nick, what are you picturing? You're picturing a person, what? Every American probably pictures a person at their keyboard just going...
Well, yeah, because that's what Hollywood shows.
Yeah, but really what a hacker does is just sit there patiently waiting for somebody to screw up. Somebody to leave a door open.
Exactly, and that is exactly what happened with SolarWinds. There was a door that was opened, they got into the network, they leveraged the system update software to get this malicious code into the networks of all these companies and federal agencies. Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Brilliant. Devious. Deviously brilliant. We'll say that.
Brilliantly devious.
So this is actually known as a supply chain attack, is what this is called. And it's called that because it affects software that is under assembly. So this type of hack is not the easiest to carry out at all, but when it can be, it is incredibly effective, as we have seen in this case. So a bit more about SolarWinds, because you probably have never heard of them. SolarWinds is a private equity-backed company whose owners have a history of buying niche software companies, combining them with competitors, offshoring the work, cutting costs in any ways possible, and then raising prices on their customers. So
Really?
they
Wow,
are,
so
yes,
capitalism.
they have a, I didn't say it, you did.
Well, why is that a bad thing? I'm just being
I'm just saying the business model is to cut costs to increase profit while sacrificing infrastructure. And I got all of this information, a really good blog post that was done by Matt Stoller that somebody shared in a group I'm a part of, wrote this fantastic blog post called How to Get Rich Sabotaging Nuclear Weapons Facilities. And he lays all of this out about SolarWinds. And that's actually how I got a lot of this info and started thinking about this to begin with is because I saw his article. But I did not realize that this was a trend in most private equity owned technology companies. It's the same business model that they just it's like a duplicator, just boom, pull the lever, duplicate, boom, pull the lever, duplicate over and over again. That causes these problems.
Yeah,
and in this
doing the same thing over and over again, they're going to find a flaw in one of the templates, I guess you could say.
Right. And in this case, the type of business model that runs rampant through private equity-owned software companies led to a security breach of catastrophic proportions. Catastrophic proportions.
Why? How come the news doesn't report this more? Do they find it? Do they think the American public's just going to find it so boring that they're not going to make any money off of it?
Because the learning curve of people even beginning to understand data and understand computer network infrastructure is so high that how are you supposed to report it if the news can't even understand it?
Also,
can't. How can they properly report it?
I can't really flaw them because when this happened, why would the news report on this when insurrection is happening?
Well, they did report on it, and I think everybody was
it kind of abruptly stopped once the insurrection happened.
That's my point, though, because this was such a big deal, and we have no clue what they stole or what they did. I felt like, again, I don't want to be conspiracy theory because it's not who I am, but it just is so coincidental that this siege happened on the Capitol right as this came out. Because this is awful what happened.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, yeah. So I understand your conspiracy. I think it might have been a coincidence, and that's unfortunate.
Well, after the intelligence agencies came out with this and said it was most likely Russia, I think everybody was expecting Trump to be like, yeah, shame on the Russians, they shouldn't have done this, let's do something about it. And he blamed China.
Why would he blame Russia? That's his buddies.
I'm just saying. But the way that this whole thing went down is just, it really rubs me the wrong way. Because this is a huge problem. And maybe that goes into the section here I want to talk about the problem. I mean, there are many ways that this problem can be viewed, right? As a geopolitical problem, maybe first and foremost. Maybe it's a question of cybersecurity policy, or maybe it's just the legally ambiguous aggressive attack by a foreign power. And I say legally ambiguous because cyber warfare isn't held to any laws. Because if you think about it, all acts of warfare throughout our history have always been hand-to-hand combat. There is no legality to cyber warfare. There's you know what I mean?
It's almost like the internet and all this technology is almost like we reset the human race. We have to figure out how to be humans again alongside this technology.
I think Brian probably would agree with you on that.
And we're watching the process unfold.
But that's the thing, because the internet, I'll use my analogy that Brett loves so much, because the internet is unstructured dream space.
Oh yeah. I hate that.
It's a playground for everybody that doesn't hold to any laws. So, that's the problem from a 50,000 foot view. That's complex, but it may not be as complex, and maybe it actually falls more on American financiers making more money by sabotaging key infrastructure rather than building it. I think that's the problem more than it being a geopolitical problem, a cybersecurity policy problem, or it being legally ambiguous. I think it's more that problem of the government, first and foremost. I keep saying first and foremost, but the government not doing its due diligence and vetting their third-party vendors, especially when it comes to network infrastructure, which is you want to have the best of the best for that, my gosh.
Oh, well, yeah, but I think even with the best, you're still going to have problems. I think we have to invent new ways for cybersecurity and stuff like that. I don't think what we have right now is always.
Well, the United States is not investing nearly as much as it should be in it compared to China and probably even Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it does fall back on the point I just made, though, with greedy companies sacrificing quality of their products and services in lieu of actually developing key infrastructure to protect their customers and keep things like this from having
over quality.
Right, and it's fitting that the CEO of SolarWinds, right as this was going down, all of a sudden a large chunk of stock was sold off before the U.S. intelligence community announced this. Interesting, might I say. And also, he has been rated as one of the best CEOs as this was happening.
By who?
I would have to go.
Who did that?
I'd have to go back through the article.
Russians? Do they vote him as the best CEO? No.
It's in this article, which I'll link to in our episode notes. But
okay.
Matt Stoller goes to how Bravo. Bravo is the name of the.
So, you might be getting to this, but what has happened to
Orlando Bravo?
Okay, well,
he's the CEO of SolarWinds. Well, I guess. He's the CEO of the private equity firm that owns SolarWinds.
You might be getting to this, but what has happened to this company? Have they faced any lawsuits or anything? Like what's going on?
Not that I've been able to read.
Oh, so they just, because they own over 75% of Fortune 500 companies, they can just get away with anything they want. Well, because of capitalism.
But that's it. What Matt outlines in his blog post is he even says it's not clear to me that Bravo is liable. Orlando Bravo, again the CEO of this private equity firm that owns SolarWinds, is it's not clear that Bravo is liable for any of the damage that he caused, but he did make one mistake because, like I just mentioned, private equity investors sold a $315 million stake in SolarWinds to one of their own long-standing financial backers shortly before the U.S. issued an emergency warning over a nation-state hack of one of the software company's products. So don't tell me that doesn't sound like insider trading.
Yeah. Dude, there's always something behind the curtain, man. There's always something behind the curtain. But I think the problem what we have these days is there's a large majority of the American population that thinks there's crazier shit going on behind the curtain when it's actually not as crazy. We all know there's stuff behind the curtain, but I don't think it's vampires sucking the blood of innocent children behind the curtain. If you get what I'm saying.
Right. Well, and to your point, I was talking about how this is rewarded versus, these American financiers and private equity companies, instead of getting their hand slaps, the CEOs tend to be rewarded, and here it is. So apparently, a couple of days before Matt published this blog post, Orlando Bravo was named Dealmaker of the Year by the Private Equity Awards.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
As his company was solely responsible for one of the largest and most catastrophic cybersecurity failures, I think, in modern history is what we're looking at with this one.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting also to note that in September of 2018, the White House... No, not September of 2018. Oh, it was September of 2018. I'm trying to get my article straight here. In September of 2018, the White House published a national cyber strategy which provides strategic steps towards securing government infrastructure, of course, and this led to a request/allocation of about $18.78 billion for cybersecurity spending in 2021. $9.85 billion of which is being allocated to the Department of Defense, which makes up more than 52% of this request. However, what's really fascinating here, compared to the 2020 allocation, it fell by about 2.27%. So they're actually allocating less money to the defense part of cybersecurity.
And then a year later, they get hacked.
Right. However... And on the contrary, the Department of Homeland Security did see an increase of 1.17% with the 2021 budget allocation versus 2021. So I get they're prioritizing and trying to shift it around, but still, like, you know, it's needless to say, there's a lot of problems here with how the U.S. deals with cybersecurity. I think we all know that. I think first and foremost, we need to revamp how third-party vendors like SolarWinds are selected, and we're falling grossly behind in this new art of warfare. Truthfully, we are. And for those of you who may have access to HBO Max, I highly recommend the HBO documentary The Perfect Weapon, which does an excellent job of charting all of this from Stuxnet back in 2010 through the 2016 presidential election to now. Beautifully done documentary that goes through the new age of warfare, which is cyber warfare. I mean, China alone spends $200 billion per year on defense, which I know does not seem like anything compared to our almost $1 trillion. But with that $200 billion per year they spend on defense, a disproportionate amount of it is being spent specifically on cyber warfare, artificial intelligence, 5G, and many other emerging technologies. A majority of our defense budget still goes to conventional warfare.
Yep.
Which is scary, because that is not where the future of warfare is. And the more that mindset, I think, persists, the more we are going to see massive and catastrophic cybersecurity failures like what we've just seen in this instance. And really, as Hollywood often does, Hollywood got this right again. Do you remember Live Free or Die Hard? It was the fourth Die Hard movie.
Yep.
Remember with the crazy hackers, they attempted to perform like a massive hack.
I like that one a lot.
Which they called a fire sale against the U.S. government.
Turn the hardware of those computer hackers into like bombs. So when they press Control Delete.
Right. They shut down like infrastructure and a blackout all across the United States. Like
a fire sale.
This is a real threat. Like, who knows with what the Russians got access to?
Yeah, they can do
that. They didn't throw some code in there to shut down the power grid all across the United States. We don't know. So that's why I wanted to focus this first episode on data privacy, and I guess this first part here, data security, because this is something we all need to become more cognizant of. And if we don't, I mean, I don't know what I don't want to be around for what's going to happen, because it's just
yeah, can you imagine like the power grid just being shut off and like there's no power to the whole country?
And if you think about it, most of the computers and networks actually running a lot of this are very old and outdated.
Yeah.
And I guess I'll end this part with hand-to-hand combat is really the old way of carrying out warfare. The new and future form of warfare is in cyberspace, with countries attempting to bring one another down from the inside, as we are seeing perfectly with what is currently happening in the United States.
Yes, an implosion. An implosion of what would you say? We're getting an implosion in this country of just misinformation and conspiracy theories that are destroying our democracy.
Well, and the thing is, it's not even just the United States. We're seeing this happen all over the world. We're seeing this rise of misinformation and autocratism, and it's all being partially driven by cyber warfare and social media.
Yeah.
I mean, we know the Russians weaponized Facebook in 2016. I mean, we know this. They didn't have to perform any hacks. They used what was already there.
Yep, they didn't have to do anything. They just sign up and then here's some fake articles.
So the countries and the governments that fail to recognize this as being the new front line of any type of war is going to be sorely hurt in the coming few decades here. So I'll make sure to put a link to Matt's article in our episode notes. Really give that a read. It was very well done and really does a really good job at summarizing what happens here with SolarWinds, why it's so important, and his focus, of course, is more on the private business part of it and the failures of that, and nobody ever getting punished. Mm-hmm. So with that, I think we'll transition over to the data privacy side, my favorite side, and quickly dive into Facebook and WhatsApp. Have you heard about this? What's going on with Facebook and WhatsApp?
Nope.
All right. Well,
I bet you didn't either until you looked it up for this podcast.
Actually, no, I've known about this for like 2 weeks
Damn it.
now. Brett, I'm really into data privacy now. Like
This is what audience. This is what Nick does. He wakes up every morning and he goes on to like technology, like news articles and stuff.
Of course I do.
Well, yeah, you should. I'm just saying.
Well, as you know, Brett, Facebook owns WhatsApp. So what happened?
I didn't know they owned him.
Yeah, they own WhatsApp.
Oh my God.
You didn't know that?
I'm under a rock. But that's probably because I don't really use Facebook and I don't really use WhatsApp.
You don't really use Facebook. Okay.
Oh, yeah, you think I'm on Facebook all the damn time? No. I probably check
don't know.
Facebook like 2 minutes a day.
Your green light's on quite a bit.
Dude, the green light's on because of Messenger.
Is that it?
Yeah?
Oh,
Your green light's on too. Are you checking?
I do scroll through it quite often, yes. A habit I'm trying to break.
I probably check Facebook max 5 minutes a day.
All right. I'll keep my comments to myself. Anyhow, what's happening here with Facebook and WhatsApp? Well, earlier in the month, Facebook announced that by the 8th of February, every WhatsApp user will have been presented with a screen that warns them the app is updating their terms of service and privacy policy. What's wrong with that? Apps and web services do this all the time, says the Peanut Gallery. Well, this may not seem so bad on the front because tech companies do this often, but in this case, Facebook is attempting to extend their tentacles further into WhatsApp to collect more user data from the app to be explicitly used for Facebook, the Facebook platform, presumably more selling of this data to unknown third parties for ad revenue. They're doing this under the guise of, you'll have more features as a business through WhatsApp business tools. And you won't need to give your phone number when integrated with Facebook because of Messenger and blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah. When really this is just another way for them to get more data from something they currently don't gather a whole lot of data from. So, that's why they're doing this under the guise that the updated policies will allow businesses to use a new set of features that integrate WhatsApp shopping features with Facebook's wider business.
Yeah.
So, that is why there are a lot of people pitching a fit about this, as we should, because historically, Facebook has been hands-off with WhatsApp when it comes to integrating its Facebook service with their other products, such as Facebook itself and Instagram. And let's be real, when they start this process of integration, it only moves in one direction. So what is the problem? Any guess what the problem is, Brett?
I don't know. When any company is like, we're gonna come in here and make this better, I just have it's like my stomach sinks, my heart sinks, because that's usually when stuff like goes to hell. When a company tries to improve, they're usually just they're coming in and they're ruining stuff because it's already good. Like
well,
TikTok.
and in the face of Facebook, which is already incredibly predatory when it comes to data, your assumption is quite right.
Yeah.
So what's the problem? I mean, if we look at WhatsApp, right? I don't know. Do you use WhatsApp, Brett?
No, I don't.
I
know
do.
you use WhatsApp to talk to our Australian friends, right?
Right. I use WhatsApp to talk to a couple of our friends in Australia. I use WhatsApp to talk to a couple of friends out in Europe. It's great because all the messages are encrypted. And WhatsApp chat data and the content of every user conversation has always been sacrosanct with its end-to-end encryption, meaning that even WhatsApp itself is unable to access and review any user communications, as it should be. As it 100% should be. But it's interesting that this encryption has constantly been under attack from law enforcement agencies, of course, right? But it has held firm mainly because of Facebook's long-term commercial vision to have more encryption, not less, which is why this move is surprising a lot of people. And it's one of those things where Facebook is saying, if you don't accept this new terms of service and privacy policy for us to collect more information from you while using WhatsApp, you cannot use WhatsApp anymore.
Oh, okay. So it's not going to be encrypted anymore.
Well,
or as encrypted, I should say.
Well,
if they're going to be collecting data from you, then what's the point of the encryption?
What they're collecting isn't going to be the actual conversations. It's more like
so
name, phone number, email address, that type of stuff.
Oh, well,
but
so they can't collect that right now?
they barely collect anything from WhatsApp. That's why this is such a big deal, because they're actually starting to collect personally identifying information from WhatsApp for the first time.
I just figured they would have collected your name and all that by now.
No, they have not.
Oh, okay.
So I think, again, the problem here is starting off small. What are they going to change and collect in the future? You know?
Yeah.
And
conversations.
As I mentioned, this change in privacy policy was being sold under enhanced business tools, but it's also being sold under the guise of interoperability, in air quotes, which they're claiming this interoperability will make it easier for users to send and receive messages sent to your Facebook account without having to share your phone number, blah. And after these announcements were made, people began flooding to another chat app provider, Signal. You may or may not have heard of Signal.
Parler.
No. That could be a case study in data privacy and security all in itself. We should talk about that at some point.
Audience out there, I want you to know that these people put their driver's license ID.
Brett, we're not getting into Parler like that again. That could be a single episode.
I know so much about Parler just because I want to know what the other side was talking. Oh my, we need to make a podcast about Parler. Oh my God, the deep rabbit hole you can go into with that.
Talk about a complete failure in data privacy and security. Anyhow,
holy crap.
After Facebook started making these announcements that were related to WhatsApp, people began flocking to Signal, which is a free app, another free messaging chat app, which is actually developed by the same nonprofit that created WhatsApp's encryption system. And the founder of Signal is actually the co-founder of WhatsApp. So Facebook bought him for billions of dollars, and then they're like, well, let's go make another one. So it's funny, even Elon Musk tweeted after this came out, 2 words, use Signal, was his tweet.
Oh, no more using WhatsApp, use Signal?
Yeah, well, that's what Elon Musk said, because after they announced this, it's like, oh boy, what else are they going to start collecting? So, like I said, this is just another example of the predatory nature of how companies like Facebook and Google are continuing to push the envelope, really as far as they can go, to collect info on users to be sold so they can make money.
I have a question. So was WhatsApp an app, like a standalone app by itself, or was it always Facebook?
Nope, it was a standalone messaging app.
Why do these companies think it's good for their business to go and like partner up with Facebook?
I mean,
or they just sell out for the money.
When somebody writes you a check for $50 billion,
I probably would do that too. So
I'm not saying that's actually how much did WhatsApp sell for?
Yeah, actually, check that.
Okay, they sold WhatsApp for $21.8 billion.
Yeah, I would sell my soul for that.
So when you're handed a check for $21.8 billion, I mean,
like, here's my app. Here, you want my child too? I don't blame them. I guess I should have thought of that, but I didn't. I wasn't thinking about it when I asked that question. So yeah, that makes sense why they give it to Facebook. At Facebook, that's a huge issue, because that's what another problem with capitalism is these companies get like hordes and hordes of money, and they can just do whatever they want with it and buy these companies out and get all this data, these tech conglomerates, Well,
and that's why you're starting to see so much come out now related to antitrust and anti-competitive practices, because that's really a big problem right now in technology. Is if you're a startup with an incredible idea and you have good intentions for your product or service, one of the big companies comes in and offers you a check for $5 billion. Well, are you going to turn that down?
No.
I mean, let's be real. So the people who start these incredible startups or companies with this incredible technology get handed a $5 billion check, and then the technology gets absorbed into the conglomerate.
What's sad is these, like WhatsApp, a standalone WhatsApp was doing fine. Like they weren't really taking, I can't really speak for this, but were they taking data?
I mean, they were also a
Very
nonprofit.
little.
No, they were built by a nonprofit. So the whole reason they built WhatsApp was to provide an alternative to SMS messaging, Facebook Messenger, in order to securely communicate with other people. So naturally, Facebook wanted to buy it.
Yep, and Facebook saw more money opportunities and snatched it.
Right. Yep. So again, it just goes into that documentary, The Social Dilemma, which you have not seen on Netflix yet. Highly encourage you do, where the business models of Google and Facebook thrives solely on ad revenue that comes from collecting user data that most users have no clue what is being collected and where it goes.
I tell you, one social media app that's going to be having trouble in the next few years, and I bet you why Facebook bought these guys is Instagram. Because with the TikTok coming out, Instagram's kind of struggling now because nobody's really making videos on Instagram anymore.
And it is incredibly hard to reproduce TikTok, I would think, as well internally.
Yeah, that algorithm they have is genius.
So, yeah, there's so much going on with these social media companies and data privacy. It's these exact same policies that are leading to the failures of social media as we see today, with an incredible rise in conspiracy theories, misinformation, and radicalism.
You know how we fix all this? Just get rid of it all.
Well, the thing is, that's not going to fix it because the damage is already done.
Let's go back to the 80s.
And there's the argument that, is it the fault of the tool or is it the fault of the people using the tool?
It's
and my argument is a little bit of both.
It's always
right?
the people, Nick.
No, it is a little bit of both, because when you look at how a platform like Facebook works, the algorithm is specifically designed to keep you on there and show you content that will keep you on there. So we as humans who have never, ever, ever had to step into
Nick,
a situation in our...
You're missing a step, Nick. Who built it that way? Humans.
Right. But, okay, separate that, though. I'm saying the argument a lot of people make is either the fault of the tool or it's the fault of people. My argument is both, because you combine the type of business model that Facebook has, where it's designed to keep you constantly engaged and serve you up content that will keep you engaged, which more often than not is misinformation or hate. And then you have people who, throughout our entire history as a species, have never before been connected to the entire world, hopping into a space where anybody can say anything, and because the other person is a digital avatar that you'll never meet, can say anything. And typically it's hateful, because most people, I guess I'm learning these last few years, are just so sad with their own lives they have to treat other people so poorly. But it's the combination of those two things that creates this monster that we're currently in right now.
Correct.
Because the algorithm isn't changing. The algorithm is actually learning more and more and more how to service up this horrible conspiracy theory, misinformation-laden content. And then you have people who continue to see that content and get more inflamed. And because we're emotional beings, we can't help ourselves but thrive in that.
And what happened to don't believe everything you see on the internet? I was raised to not believe everything I see on the internet. It's mostly fake. Get your news from a reliable source. And now, apparently, everybody in the frickin' country just believes anything they see on Facebook.
Well, that gets into the whole politics of people sowing distrust in the media, but we won't go there.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. Yep, you got a point. Yes.
But I'm just saying, it's the more data and information that companies like Facebook want to collect, the more we are at risk of this problem continuing to grow. And I'm not saying eliminate it entirely. I've never argued that. But at this point, we need more transparency and we need more choice. People need to be able to choose what data is being collected on them. That isn't hard. That isn't hard to do.
No.
So it's odd enough that I do all the research to get this. And actually last night, WhatsApp announced, well, I guess last night being Friday, WhatsApp announced that they are planning to actually postpone this update to its privacy policy following concerns from users and calls to switch platforms. So now they're giving users until May 15th to review and accept its new policy. But I don't know why they're extending it. People are going to have to agree to it if they want to stay on WhatsApp, regardless.
Yeah.
So, and it's interesting to note, too, that, that this is happening. Apple and Facebook have been going at it for quite some time as well. Because if you look at Apple as a company, Steve Jobs from the beginning very much believed in user control of data and the privacy of that data. That is built into the fabric of Apple as a company. Facebook is the exact opposite. So I don't know if you knew this, Brett, but Apple is actually rolling out a series of updates to iPhones where all apps are required to show you what data they are collecting on you, and you get to choose whether you allow it or not.
I had to finally update my phone then. I haven't updated my phone for like 2 years.
This is pissing Facebook off royally, and they're trying to sue Apple over it. I think this is brilliant. I think this is brilliant what Apple is doing. This is how it should be.
Why do you think it's pissing them off? Because it's good for the people.
Well, right, because they're right, because their predatory practice of obtaining data from people without their consent, because nobody reads their terms and services, because it's so complicated and awful. That's why they're pissed.
Yeah, they're gonna probably lose money over it because they can't. Actually, I have no idea how all that works.
So Facebook is claiming
I just know that if they have less data, less money is going to be had for this company.
More than 90% of Facebook's revenue comes from advertising.
Yes.
I mean, that your business I can't believe that a company got that large just on that alone.
Yeah.
Like, if you look at Apple's $275 billion a year revenue, barely any of it comes from advertising. It comes from hardware sales and App Store percentages. So, Facebook's claiming that Apple is being anti-competitive because they're flexing their iPhone muscle that is designed for rich people. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
I respect Apple for doing that.
I respect Apple as well.
Thank you for giving users the choice on what data you collect from
But that's
Unlike
all
Facebook.
That's all people need, and that's all I'm personally asking for, and I think that's what a majority of people are asking for, is transparency and more choice. Oddly enough, that's exactly what I'm working on in the Open Voice Network Privacy and Security Workgroup, where we're trying to come up with privacy guidelines and standards for voice tech.
Oh, nice little plug there.
John Stein, you can thank me later. Anyhow, this is just, again, another instance of something that really shouldn't be happening, that is because we're into the second decade of the 21st century, and we're still such children as a society when it comes to how we treat data.
We're literally, like, in 2000, we were literally a baby and somebody handed a gun. And we had to figure out how to use it without killing everybody.
But that's what I'm saying. This year, I really do think things are going to start changing, because people are really becoming more cognizant of how much data is being collected on them. There actually is a piece of legislation that was I don't know if it was introduced, but I have an abstract of it that was shared. But there is a piece of legislation going around. Oh my gosh, where was this? I gotta scroll and find it.
Okay.
Yes, it's known as COPRA, which stands for Consumer Online Privacy Rights Act of 2019.
You say COPRA?
COPRA. C-O-P-R-A. Okay. And the sponsor is actually Senator Maria Cantwell of Washington State, so in the heart of Techland with Microsoft and Amazon and tons of startups.
Okay.
But this is like the first step in terms of federal legislation for the United States on data privacy and control of data and transparency on data. Europe already has GDPR, which works pretty well for the time being. Again, there's flaws with everything. All we have so far in the U.S. is the California Consumer Protection Act, CCPA, which is just bad. So I hope something comes of this, because it needs to, especially in the United States, where all of these major tech conglomerates live. Anyhow, I really went off on a lot of tangents there on this one.
That was a good talk. I enjoyed that. That was good.
Well, like I said, though, I just you'll notice me weaving more privacy and security into the thread of everything we talk about, because this is important stuff. And you can't honestly talk about technology in 2021 without bringing it back to data privacy and security. I hope at some point we actually can define what data is properly in legal sense and define ownership of data, because none of that exists right now. Mm-hmm. I would love to live in a world where I could get reimbursed, annually for people using my data. There is a value.
Great.
There is a value assigned to your data that is collected.
Yeah. Can you imagine getting a percentage back from these companies in your taxes because of all the data they collected from you from using their social media apps?
Yes, it would honestly be a form of universal basic income and could lift so many people out of poverty.
Mm-hmm.
Because think about how much of that data is collected for free right now, and nobody gets compensated for it. It gets misused, and as a matter of fact, it gets used against you more often than not to sell you more stuff.
Yeah, which doesn't work on me because I never buy anything.
No, but you just download apps and games.
Well, yeah. Actually, that's No, you're right.
I was like, when are you going to come back with here? Like, I call it as I see it.
I don't buy anything, but they get money from the ad revenue when I'm playing the game.
Brett is one of those people where the Facebook algorithm has him so locked in to mobile games. How many mobile games did you see you downloaded last year?
I don't see.
How?
No. I'm getting to it. I don't see ads for like shampoo or anything like that. I don't see ads for like furniture or tech stuff. I see ads for mobile games. That's all I ever see. Every post, every 4 posts is probably a mobile game on Facebook for me. And I'll go and download it, and I'll give them probably like 50 cents for an ad, and I'll delete the app because it sucks.
See, the ads I get, it's all like random products and services because of the websites I visit.
Yeah.
But yeah, they got you dialed in when it comes to games. Anyhow, that's about all I have to say about this. I'll make sure to include the links to the articles that we referenced here for you to review in the episode notes. And so yeah, with all that being said, I'm going to be real with everybody. We don't have a whole bunch of guest interviews waiting in the wings. So if you are interested or know of anybody who you think would be a great guest to have on the show, please reach out to us so we can have a chat with you. And hopefully within the next couple of weeks, I'll be able to get some more of those done so we can get back into our cadence of showcasing people from all over the world who are working in AI, voice, data privacy, security, 5G, blockchain, etc. But yeah, that's all I got to say. I guess it'll be a mystery for what we're going to talk about next week.
I always thought if you ever want to repeat a guest too, they can come back on. Doesn't have to be brand new people all the time.
Oh, I would have Brian Romley back on the show in a heartbeat.
Oh man, I loved editing that one. That was an interesting one. He's an interesting guy.
The world's most interesting person, literally. Well, with all that being said, we'll be back next week. Have a fantastic week and take care.
Thank you.
Artificial
Intelligence.
voice recognition, machine learning.
Robotics.
You've been listening to the Artificial Podcast with your host Nick Myers. To stay up to date with all our latest episodes, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts. To learn more about how your organization can benefit by unlocking the power of AI and voice, visit www.redfox-ai.com. Until next time.